should you rely on a single source of income, a single income stream, or is it reckless to not build, multiple streams of income, at this stage of life and kind of where we live in the country, in the state of things?
Yeah.
Is it reckless to not have more than one stream of income, or can you live on one?
I love the question. I love this topic because in a lot of ways, it gets at like, who's the boss? Like, who's in control? Who's in charge? From, 30,000 feet, my personal opinion is I love the idea of multiple streams of income because I never want to rely on like just one. That feels more risky to me than learning multiple skills or having multiple skills or applying one skill to multiple areas. I guess you could do that too. But to me, it feels like, because like, what if one goes down, and then, you have these other ones that you can kind of pull from. Whereas if you only have one income stream, which I feel like, and correct me if, well, maybe don't correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you talk about it too. I feel like that's like almost like a older, I wouldn't necessarily say outdated. I think that's too strong of a word, but it's like an older way of thinking, in the pre 2000s kind of way. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that, like almost every topic we talk about, that it's so circumstantial. I think that it's
that's the right answer.
Yeah, I always say, we've said it a couple of times, like it's gray, it's not black and white,
Yeah.
And every situation is unique. But I'll say,
and every personality is unique.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, like, if you're broke and you're sitting here, if you're working an 8 to 5 that's paying you $40,000 a year, and you got 3 kids and you're, $100,000+ in debt, and you have no idea what's going on with your life or how to get out of this situation, then yeah, it's probably foolish to rely on your one form of income,
Yeah.
But it's interesting that, so let me ask this, why do we just by nature, tend to rely on a kind of single income salary role as the backbone of our financial plan? I mean, because isn't that a good idea? And, for the most part?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's an interesting question. Just so I'm clear on the question, why do we tend to rely on only one? Actually, I think this is maybe a good approach to that question. I think the reason we tend to rely on only one, because number one, it's easier to manage mentally. Your mind is not split. There is something to be said about focus, and like laser focus on one thing as opposed to being spread thin. And at the same time, why do we focus on one? Maybe we feel a sense of accomplishment when we have completed just one, and then we kind of just coast from there, and we don't try and strive and build for more.
Yeah, and I love this because I've been on both sides of this. Even in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I was, working an office job, making a very low salary, 40 hours a week. Hated it, but on the side was creating, an extra stream of income with a side business. And then now in the last 6 months, I am in a role now, we've talked about this before, we're both in sales, and now we're both in roles where we have uncapped commission opportunity. And so the opportunity that has shifted my mindset. And in a way, it's almost like multiple streams of income, because I've got the base salary to fall back on, but the rest is up to me and I can generate. And so because of that, I'm not in a position where I'm considering a second source of income at this stage, because I'm doing what you said, laser focusing on this one role and position. but it's
maybe
different.
maybe we should
It's not a fair comparison.
maybe we should, sure, yeah, and maybe we should define more so like multiple streams of income, meaning, hey, I'm working at Costco from 9 to 5, and then I have my other job that at McDonald's or something like that, like to make ends meet. That's one conversation, as opposed to in our, I guess, lives, we have the sales gig that we have, right? But then it's like we have kind of these, at least I do, have these other kind of things that are significantly more part-time. I hate using the phrase side hustles. Well, no, I don't. Side hustles, but those are, significantly more part-time, and dare I even say passive to some extent, although also not. I don't know.
Create passive income. Everybody, that's a hot phrase.
There you go.
No, I get it though. And that's what's unique about where we are, the two of us right now, is like for the last 6 months,
we created that for ourselves too.
Yeah. I've legitimately not been doing anything other than my main kind of job for the last 6 months. And so, but we're also in the unique positions where we're not struggling financially and not trying to so yeah, we do need to define some terms here, because we're having one conversation around like somebody that's financially struggling and can't get a grip on their life. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole nother conversation around like people who are just doing great financially in a great spot, but want to have more, want to succeed, want to accomplish more. And so we kind of having two different conversations at once. And if you're listening, you might be confused, but
and I'm sure anybody can relate to this to some extent. As I look back on my, let's say I'm 33. Look back on the last 15 years of my life since I was 18. There has not been one single time in my life where I have not had more than one thing going on. When I was in college, I had, obviously college, that's its own sort of job in and of itself. I had like a job, I was a busboy. Actually made decent money because I was at a pretty high-end steakhouse. And then I was also an intern. All of those at the same time. I mean, any one of those could be considered a single job. And then I graduated college, worked at a nonprofit. But then at that particular nonprofit, I took over one of the departments and was being paid for the main part of the nonprofit, but also the like this secondary sort of department. And so I was still working two things, And
this is interesting. It's interesting because what you're getting at is that you've always been this way. So where did that come? Because let's circle it back to the thing
that's
you
a good question. I have no idea.
You said at the beginning it comes down to that conversation of like who's the boss and who's in control. It seems like your whole life you have operated like I am in control of my future, and so like I'm gonna do what it takes. And I think that mindset, I think, is what oftentimes separates people who are stuck in cycles that they seemingly can't get out of financial struggle.
Talk about that more. Talk about that specific thing more of people being stuck.
Yeah, I think, we've said this in videos in the past. Like we've said, you don't have an income problem, you have a behavior problem. Like that's what we're talking about here ultimately, is that like I would venture, and I can say this because I have financially struggled. I know people are probably looking at me thinking like, what is this guy, like 25 years old? What does he know about struggle? And let's have a one-on-one conversation. I'll tell you about struggles. Okay. Like when people are in struggles, and I've been there because my family's been there, like the mindset is usually to blame everything but yourself. So with that, we're talking about who's the boss, who's in control. Essentially what you're saying, I'm not in control. There's something else, like the system, my workplace, my boss, whatever you want to call it. The system is probably what people say often. The system is broken. That they blame
everything else, right?
The economy, politics, the president, whoever. we blame anything but ourselves for the state of our finances. And as long as you stay in that professional victim mindset, like you'll never break out. You just won't, unless you win a lot someday, but you'll probably still end up broke. If you keep that mindset. And so it's the mindset shift from like, I'm not in control to I'm in control and I'm taking full responsibility, that can break you out of those cycles.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds to me like this is less about, it's almost like it's less about income and money, as important as those things are, but there's something so much larger at play than just, hey, I'm just trying to earn more money, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because like, whether or not you have more than one stream of income, which is the conversation we're having, is less important than like, what is your mindset and your approach to how you handle money and how you live life. You can have multiple streams of income and still suck. And still live broke. Like having multiple streams of income or not is not going to make you rich or like prepare you for retirement. Your behavior with that money will.
Yes.
So what's the biggest advantage then to early in life, as early as possible, kind of building multiple streams of income? Like you're somebody that has, right? Like you from the very beginning, as early as college or before, like
I think,
so what's the biggest advantage?
I hate to keep hitting on the like psychology side of things, but I think for me anyways, the biggest advantage of having multiple things at once is, never mind the income, never mind even the skills that you learn while doing multiple things, but the most important thing of having multiple things going at once is it forces you and your capacity for growth to expand. So if I am just focused on one thing, which has its merit, I see a lot of benefit to just having one thing and laser focusing on that one thing. There's something to be said about that. So I don't want to completely ignore that entirely. But if you have, let's say, one main thing, and then you have, maybe one or two or three or however many other different things, you're forced to expand your capacity and develop a muscle that you didn't even know existed by handling and juggling multiple things. I don't know. That's kind of my take on that. So it's not just, about money in that sense. It's about something much more, and it's about becoming,
so the act of,
ultimately just
the act of having multiple things is what helped create your, I guess your view and your kind of approach to money, because it helped build that muscle. That makes sense.
That's a good way of putting it.
It's is it a product of like upbringing and environment?
I don't know, because both my parents, my dad worked one job, my mom worked one job, and they both did, relatively well. So I don't know, maybe it's a personality thing, to kind of hit back on what you said at the very beginning. It's like, it's such a nuanced conversation, so what's better? The answer is yes. What's better for you as an individual,
ultimately, like, I don't care whether you have more than one stream of income or not. I care about how you're handling that money. More that, like, that's the conversation we want to have more than anything.
I just, again, it's maybe more a personal thing than anything else, and listeners can disagree if they want to, and that's all fine and good, because again, there's no I don't know that there's one right answer. I can make an argument for both, and it could be really bad for one person but really good for the next person. But for me, if I'm betting everything on one job or one income source, again, what goes through my head is, what happens if that one income source all of a sudden disappears? And especially if it's in like some kind of corporate role, like corporate things change on a dime and you could not have a job tomorrow, So to me, again, I like the idea of multiple things just because it makes me feel more in control. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And in it, but even our personalities are so different, you know. Like I'm in a corporate role, but it's a very performance based role. And so in that sense, like I find my control there. Like I love that
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like if I did get fired one day, it would be because I didn't perform. And that performance is inside of my control. Um,
Mm-hmm.
versus like something that's just totally now. I mean, you could have crazy businesses closing and going belly up or whatever. Now that would be totally out of your control, and then I would be screwed. I don't know.
Right.
I guess the other conversation here too is being dual income though with a spouse. You know, like
Sure.
do we both have spouses that work and that produce an income that like if we both lost our main sources of income tomorrow, we wouldn't be worried about like where's our dinner coming tomorrow, you know, like we would be stressed and
Right.
we'd be like, let's get a job.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's unique there. I guess another
Yeah.
conversation is that I could see for a lot of people, and regardless of where you're at on the spectrum, whether you are doing well financially and you want to just expand your opportunity, or you're struggling and you're working hard and you can't make ends meet, like sometimes building extra income sounds exhausting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how do you convince somebody that's already stretched thin, feels like they're stretched thin and emotionally, you know, told that it's worth it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. How do you convince someone it's worth the effort to get another job when they're already stretched so thin? I mean, you have to want it bad enough. You know, you have to want,
That's it.
and you can also realize that it's only temporary, perhaps. But the cool thing is this, man. Like once you, sorry to get so excited so quickly, but I had a thought. The cool thing is this: is that, you know, let's say you're stretched thin, that literally forces you to grow. Like if you only have one option of I need another job to make ends meet, then the only option you have is get another job. And realizing that, hey, this is only for a period of time. This is not forever. It's only for a period of time. By the time you get through that season, you are a significantly stronger individual at the other end, or when you come out of it, or whatever.
Yeah. So we
When
were
the
we were
season
just
ends.
talking about this. It like, I mean, we just keep going back to psychology, right? I mean, that's where this all goes. But like, I like as you said, it comes down to, do you want to get better or not? And
Mm-hmm.
I think this might be a bold statement, but I think majority of people, regardless of financial situation, are just content. Like
Mm-hmm.
they've got
Why
no,
is that, man? Like, why do you think people are just happy with?
they're not even happy. Like they're miserable, but they don't like, it's like wishful thinking, right? Like they wish things could be better and they're going to complain about it to everybody in their life that like things suck, but they have
Yeah.
no like personal responsibility for their life. And they have like no desire to improve themselves as an individual. They have no desire to like
Mm-hmm.
improve their skill sets or to improve their hireability for a higher paying job, or to step into a you know, cold calling sales job with uncapped commission because they're a hustler. You know, like they're just going to sit
Yeah.
back and blame everybody else. And so I
It's
don't
just
think
such a
it's that they're
weird kind of
happy.
concept to me. Like not
It
having,
seems so
just being
foreign.
okay with, yeah,
Yeah, imagine being
to
content.
just have
I
no
say this,
drive for the future.
I say this all the time, and this is probably going to hurt some of you guys' feelings, but like just imagine being content with mediocrity.
Oh.
Like, what kind of life is that?
Content with mediocrity.
What kind of, like, if you're listening to this right now, like, what kind of life is contentment with average, contentment with mediocrity? Like, that's just misery.
Dude, I get so excited chatting with you, dude, because like, these are the kind of conversations that people just don't really have, where we're like, are you really okay with just chilling? Like, are you really okay just, like you said, being mediocre and kind of just skating by? It's like, no, don't you want to have a daily drive to get more, achieve more? And I mean, there's a healthy thing to be said about like downtime and chilling and resting, and you can almost get like addicted to success and drive and everything. So there's something to be said about rest, but like, it's just so, like, I'm always thinking about something.
Yeah. Well,
I'm always thinking about like, what can I build? How can I get better?
That begs my next question, which was going to be like, at what point is it overkill? Like, at what point is the hustle and the grind? Like, I'm personally like ridiculously obsessed with success and drive and motivation and all those things, whatever you want to call it. But at what point for the average person is that just too much, and you start to like risk your, mental health, physical health, family health? Is there a point?
Yeah. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. If you are in a position where you are forced to, take on more income, or take another job rather, and you do that for a period of time, it is going to grow your capacity so you can handle more ultimately. But is there a point? I think there is a point, and I think probably, not to sound too cliche here or obvious, but I think that point is probably different for everybody.
Yeah.
And equally so, if you can push past that point, maybe there isn't a point. Actually, now that I'm verbally processing here, maybe there's not a point where it's just like, hey, the more you push through the pain of getting and achieving more, the more your capacity continues to grow and develop.
Yeah. And that's where,
I mean, like, because there's like, you got people who are working, 20 or 40 hours a week or whatever. And then you got, guys like Elon Musk who have 7 multi-billion-dollar companies, So it's like,
well, and that begs like that's where it starts to, you just start having the circumstantial conversations, like if you are struggling financially, again, loads of debt, working a, dead end job that you can't, that you hate, like, at that point, for the short term, if you want your circumstances to change, you're probably just gonna have to suck it up. Like, you're probably gonna have to work nights and be away from your family for a little bit to make something like that happen, to make drastic level of change. But you said it earlier, the idea is that it's temporary. The idea is that that doesn't become your end all be all, because we've also seen on the flip side, like the wealthy, the ambitious, the, pursuit, like, ruin their family. We've seen like people so obsessed with careers, making more money than they know what to do with, but they're miserable because they have nothing outside of that. They've abandoned their family. They have like, and so we're not advocating for that. Like, we both love,
right? Of course not.
Guys, you love your kids, like, and you are, you're a great dad and a great husband. Like you would not sacrifice those 3 people for more money.
I wouldn't sacrifice long term. Yeah, I mean, at some point there's a certain, like, okay, do I really need more money? And so I wouldn't sacrifice it long term. But sometimes, and again, this is where, you get in that gray area. It's a nuanced conversation. Sometimes you have to for a season, but knowing mentally this is for a season, so that again, when I come out of it, like, ultimately I am a better person for it. But you do have to kind of like tell yourself this is not forever, especially, and again, we're big advocates for family, right? Especially if you are sacrificing time with those who are most important to you. And when I say most important to you, those people should be wife if applicable, and then kids if applicable, secondary to your spouse. I guess wife or husband, whichever. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to sacrifice those kind of relationships at the expense, or you don't want to put those relationships at the expense of trying to just earn and crush it and kill it and hustle, because that's not good. I don't think.
Yeah.
Do you think, I'm curious, do you think it's 2025, right? Do you think things are different today in this kind of conversation of having multiple streams of income? Do you think things are different today than they were, say, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 years ago? And this is before both of us were alive.
I was going to say, I mean, it's hard to say because we weren't alive, but just based on what you hear from family members and grandparents and parents, like, surely something's different. Something's changed, but like the one thing that's never changed is the human being. And
yes. Oh, dude, that is such a good thing to say.
Say
that one more time.
Yeah, I mean, the world's always going to change. Things are going to get harder or easier. Inflation's going to rise and fall. But like the one thing that's never going to change is the human being, the human condition. And that is like, we decide, like, I've heard stories about this, as I was a kid. I'm aging myself, so in how young I am, but like I was a kid in 2008, during the kind of most big recession, and I was blinded to the realities of that. But like for as many families that look at that time with sadness and misery over what happened, there's an equal amount of families that made it through, like because they were prepared, because they had lived a life that not because they were wealthy, not because they were millionaires or whatever, but because they had like controlled what they could control, and they had control over their life. They didn't let the system have control over them. And that's a mindset thing. Like, and so in one sense, no, I don't think anything's different. Like, because times are going to change, things are going to come and go, but our reaction.
So I think what you're getting at in some way, then, yes, okay, you literally stole the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say. So then, times change and everything like that, and you have to be not only willing, but able to adapt and change with them if the times call for it. So it's like you can't get so comfortable and complacent in one particular lifestyle, I guess, that as times are changing and as economies are changing and as, cultures are changing, everything's always changing and shifting. You do not change and shift with it. You, in fact, in a lot of ways, have to be mentally ahead of it so that you can build success for yourself.
Yes, that's so good. That's really, really good. And that kind of sums up, I think, this whole conversation. And that, like, whether it's one income, multiple incomes, whether it's you're going to work a corporate 8 to 5 for the next 30 years or have 5, side gigs and side hustles rocking and rolling. Like, what's more important is what are you doing with what you have? And like, are you prepared for the world to change around you? Like, and what's going to happen when it does? How are you going to react?
Right.
Because the system has no control over your life. You have control over your life. And like, the system's going to change. The country's going to change. Republicans and Democrats are going to go back and forth, right? Like, you decide how you respond and react to those things. So whether that's, sticking with your 9 to 5 and being content, or getting 5 side hustles, like, that's for you to decide. And I don't think one approach to life.
How does someone, I guess, kind of like really figure out, like, hey, what's better for me? Like, okay, Josh, that's great for you. You've kind of, learned about yourself that, as you look back on your life, you've always kind of had, your fingers in multiple different avenues. How does someone kind of figure that out for themselves, whether, I should laser focus on one, or I should, maybe have more than one? How do you figure that out?
I think it starts by deciding what you want out of life. I don't think most people know what they want out of life. I think they have a figment of like a reality that social media sells them, or, movies sell them, but they've never thought truly and deeply and hard about what they want out of life. What is important to you? That question is going to be like different for every single person. What do you value in life? And then you have to, from there, honestly reflect on your life and say, is the way that I'm living getting me to where I want to go? Like, are the things that I'm doing, is the approach that I've chosen getting me to that preferred version of the future that I have? And that's where you start in making that decision, I think. And so we've gone super kind of philosophical in this, but
well, I was going to take it. I want to go. I want to press that a little bit more, just a little bit, and say, okay, so I'm not where I want to be. Here's where I do want to be, and maybe even here's some things that I need to do in order to get to where I want to be. But why do people stop there? So often they don't press forward into whatever it is that they're trying to get to, even if they have great ideas for how to get there. It just kind of stops in their head
because they don't want it. They're lying to themselves. I mean, they're lying to themselves. Like, you can't want something and not take steps towards it. If you're not taking steps towards it, then you don't actually want it.
You don't want it bad enough. Yes.
You don't want it bad enough. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Let's end on that. Where can people find us?
TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. We have a Facebook, but we don't really touch that, so don't go there.
Spotify.
Spotify.
I started doing stuff on Spotify.
That's great. Yeah, we're figuring this out as we're going. Come along the journey, and you're gonna see videos, a bunch of different types of things. We're experimenting, seeing what you guys like.